People have become refugees in and outside Ukraine. Hundreds of millions of people in the global south are facing food shortages and famine because of Russia's invasion and blockades of Ukrainian food exports. And the war is the primary cause of food and energy inflation around the world. And most importantly, the war poses an existential threat to global security and to Canada's security.
I hate to interrupt the honourable member, but we have reached the hour for statement by members. But before we do that, I'd just like to let the member know that he will have 3 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock for the rest of his speech. Question. Excuse-moi. Je me dévance un petit peu.
Getting ahead of myself. Statements by members. The honourable member for Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, only a few decades ago, polio was a common and much feared infectious disease. Now we are tantalizingly close to eradicating polio through vaccination. One outstanding polio champion is Rotary International, a key partner in the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, which to date has vaccinated 2.5 billion children worldwide. Ramesh Ferris is a Rotarian hero in my riding of the Yukon. A polio survivor, Ramesh hand-cycled across the country in 2008 in a fund and awareness-raising Cycle to Walk campaign. Today, Ramesh remains at the heart of Rotary's tireless eradication campaign. While we celebrate 99.9% success in ridding the world of polio, the last 0.1% is by far the toughest. Polio remains endemic in 2 countries, while new outbreaks in different regions of the world continue to challenge us. Many of these areas are racked with conflict and instability, reminding us that peace must pave the way to good health. Mr. Speaker, as we mark World Polio Day, let us renew our commitment to make polio a disease of history.
The honourable member for Haliburton Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Each year, 2 students from each of the 7 high schools in my riding are selected to participate in a program called the Capital Experience. During their 3-day visit to Ottawa, they will learn about the various career opportunities that await them following their graduation from post-secondary education. I would like to introduce this year's participants: Liam Rutledge and Lillian Keys-Brazier from IU Weldon, Eric Carpenter and Lauren Lachance from Fenland Falls, Cole Hamilton and Adela Hubbard from Highlands, Regan Lusted and Angela Staples from St. Thomas Aquinas, Emma Howard and Aaliyah Rowe from LCVI, Mackenzie Slama, Tame Alsadi and Oriana Ing from Brock, and of course, Jacob Wind from Crestwood. I would like to thank the sponsors, the many Lions clubs, the Rotary clubs, and Royal Canadian Legions that contributed, the many individuals that took time out of their schedules to meet with them. Thank you. It is my hope that these students will be inspired as they continue future opportunities as we welcome them to Ottawa. Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Humber River, Black Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I've been working on the Eye Care Bill C-284, I have learned that many people take their eyesight for granted. Today, I want to recognize Dr. Steve Arsenoff, the president of the Eye Foundation of Canada, a remarkable ophthalmologist from my very own riding who improves the lives of many Canadians. Dr. Arsenoff is actively helping remote communities as well by spending up to 3 weeks a year traveling with the iVan project for over 30 years. This initiative, plus many others, has been a beacon of hope for those needing eye care outside of the most populated areas, especially the Indigenous communities. His dedication, expertise, and compassion have transformed countless lives with his other projects, as well as throughout the world. Initiatives like these make Canada stronger, healthier, and more vibrant. I want to thank Dr. Arsenoff for his unwavering commitment to Humber River, Black Creek, and all Canadians. To enhance the good work of Canada's eye health community, I ask all of our members to support Bill C-284 tomorrow afternoon.
The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, I would like to highlight the success of the various groups of the Fédération de l'Âge d'Or du Québec in Berthier-Masquinongé, who are celebrating their 50th anniversary. As a member of Parliament, it's a great privilege for me to be able to share time with them, and I can say that they have shown incredible indulgence by trying to teach me how to follow the rhythm of a line dance. And I'd particularly like to salute the group which is visiting Parliament today under the dynamic leadership of Danielle Beauregard and Diane Charette. The group from Sainte-Ursule is explosive. And I should note that this association has honored me with membership. They surprised me with that membership at a supper when they gave me my membership card. You know, I wanted to delay that moment as long as possible, but in the end, I'm really happy to be part of that gang. Mr. Speaker, these people change the lives of seniors and spread light and break isolation. We need to recognize their work, and long life to the Fédération d'Âge d'Or du Québec.
L'honorable député de Whitby.
The honourable member for Whitby.
L'honorable député de Whitby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in the House to honor Whitby historian Lynn Philip Hodgson, who passed away peacefully on October 11th. Lynn will be remembered as a respected Canadian historian, author, and foremost expert on Camp X, a World War II communication center and training school for spies that operated in Whitby, Oshawa, which is now commemorated at Intrepid Park. The Whitby Historical Society considered Mr. Hodgson to be a true friend, a Whitby history keeper, and you'll find Camp X artifacts on display at the Lind House Museum. Friends remember Lynn as an amazing gentleman and a truly one of Whitby's greatest historians. He and his wife Marlene worked tirelessly to ensure that the stories of Camp X and the people who worked there would be preserved. Mr. Speaker, I'm thinking of Lynn's wife Marlene and his family at this time. We owe him a debt of gratitude for his contributions to our community and to preserving our history for generations to come. Thank you.
The honourable member for Provencher.
After 8 long years of this NDP Liberal government, we have out-of-control spending, record-high inflation, housing prices doubled, grocery prices skyrocketing, and the highest levels of food bank use in Canadian history. But thankfully, charities in Manitoba are stepping up. Niverville and Southeast Helping Hands Food Banks volunteers went door to door, and the response was overwhelming. 19,000 pounds of food. Southland's Church annual Thanksgiving food and clothing drive provided hampers for more than 1,000 families, with over 30,000 pounds of food and 20,000 pounds of clothing. In Steinbach, local businesses and individuals have contributed almost $1.5 million to support the Bridge Project, a 24 low-income housing unit. Where the NDP Liberal government has failed Canadians, charities are bringing it home. Hear, hear. So how does this Prime Minister respond? He punishes charities. Through the CRA, he has now imposed increased administrative burdens for charities who hold internal express trusts. This Prime Minister, he's just not worth the cost.
The honourable member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have heard from many constituents about their concerns regarding the recent events in the Middle East. Canada, as a nation of peace, must do everything it can to find a way to end the bombardment of Gaza and the current conflict, and to continue to ensure humanitarian aid reaches those devastated by the violence. Innocent Palestinians living in Gaza have the right to the essentials of life, the right to live in dignity. We support Israel in their drive to free hostages held by Hamas and to protect itself from further terrorist attacks within the limits of international and humanitarian law. At home, we must not entrench ourselves in positions pitted against one another. Reports of hate crime, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia hurt us all. This is not the way to find peace and promote security, not in Israel and Palestine, and certainly not here in Canada. Peace be with us all. Shalom. Salam.
Honourable member from Cloverdale, Langley City.
Today I stand to recognize World Polio Day and the efforts of Rotary International. Over 700 Rotary clubs across Canada, including my own club in Langley, carry the vision of a polio-free world and continue to work tirelessly toward this goal. Since 2006, the federal government has contributed over $200 million to support polio eradication efforts. Unfortunately, the pandemic has caused millions of children to miss their polio vaccinations, resulting in outbreaks threatening this tremendous program. Sustained action is critical to protect global health. If we stop now, we risk the paralysis of 200,000 children worldwide each year. Please join me today in marking World Polio Day by thanking all who contribute to eradicating polio in our local communities and internationally. Our work is not yet complete. We must remain steadfast in our support to end this terrible disease once and for all. Thank you.
The honourable member for Montmagny, Liselay, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years of this government, the cost of living is just going up, up, up. We have record levels of inflation, and people can't make ends meet. The inflationist spending from this government is making Quebecers poorer. When we know that 1 Canadian out of 2 lives from paycheck to paycheck, we know that things are not going well. And yet this government is clinging to power through its agreement with the NDP. And they've found a new ally, the Bloc Québécois. The Bloc, which wants to radically increase the second carbon tax, which applies in Quebec, and which adds 17 cents to the cost of a litre of gas. Unlike what the members of the Bloc would have you believe, when you tax a farmer on the prairies who grows food, and when you tax the trucker who transports them, well, you're also taxing those who buy that food. And last time I checked, in Quebec, we eat food that comes from other Canadian provinces. So, Mr. Speaker, we can't say it enough. It's very costly to vote for the Bloc Québécois. The Honourable Member for Vancouver-Granville.
Mr. Speaker, 30 years. That's how long the Member of Parliament for Vancouver Centre has served in this chamber. She's the longest-serving female MP, but she's so much more. For all of us who grew up in Vancouver, she's an icon. Her energy, passion, wit, and intellect, and of course her commitment to being truly fabulous, putting many of us to shame in the process, is second to none. Her dedication to public service and improving the lives of those around her is unwavering and something to which we should all strive. She's been a long-time inspiration for young women, people of color, and members of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. Tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, the City of Vancouver is proclaiming October 25th as Hetty Fry Day, an honor that she richly deserves. I am honored to serve with her and grateful to call her a friend. I know that every member in this place, and particularly her colleagues...
So... I'd like to remind all members, this is one of those gray area situations because it was a... Excuse me for a second. And that's the reason why I didn't pick it up right away, but we should refrain from using members' names, even if it is a designated day by another government, but we should refrain from using current members' names in this House. We refer to each other by our riding names. The Honourable Member from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of failure, Canadians are paying the price for Liberal waste and corruption. The Socialist Coalition is not taking Canada's housing crisis seriously. Under this NDP Liberal government, seniors are being forced from their homes. They can't afford the mortgage payments. Canadians can't afford their mortgages because interest rates have soared. This Prime Minister bragged about he doesn't even think about interest rates. While the Liberals and their media allies were gaslighting Canadians with inflation denialism, our Conservative leader was clear-eyed. He warned Canadians that out-of-control NDP Liberal spending would drive inflation. Higher inflation leads to higher interest rates. This isn't rocket science, it's arithmetic. The NDP plus the Liberals equals a government that is spending more than we can afford. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Only common sense Conservatives will bring the solutions that Canadians need by building homes they can actually afford. Yeah.
The Honourable Member for South Surrey, White Rock.
It is with a heavy heart that I address the tragic news out of Sault Ste. Marie. 5 people are dead, including 3 children, ages 6, 7, and 12, all shot and killed in an act of domestic violence. These innocent lives were ripped away by someone who was supposed to protect them. This is an unimaginable and devastating loss. On behalf of the official opposition, I extend condolences to the victims' loved ones. Our hearts go out to you as you grieve this loss. As a family lawyer who has helped women navigate difficult and violent relationships, I must point out that this is not an isolated incident. This government must do more to protect women and children from domestic violence. On average, a woman is killed every 6 days by their partner. The Justice Minister admits this type of violence is an epidemic, but they fail failed to protect this family. The Prime Minister cannot continue to sit on the sidelines while women and children lose their lives.
The Honourable Member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commemorate the 190th anniversary of the United States Consulate in Halifax, which marked the birth of diplomatic relations between our nations as the first U.S. consulate in British North America. Over the years, our diplomatic ties have grown stronger as we've weathered challenges together, from historic events to evolving geopolitical dynamics, from the Halifax explosion of 1917 to the tragic events of September 11th, 2001. We have stood together in times of need. Today, the U.S. Consulate in Halifax continues to foster economic, cultural, and educational cooperation in the Atlantic region. I would like to recognize in particular the remarkable contributions of Lyra S. Carr, who assumed the role of Consul General in July 2021, becoming only the second female Consul General in the post's history. As we celebrate this enduring partnership, let's remember the words of President Biden in this very chamber. Canada and the United States can do big things. We stand together, do them together, rise together. We're going to write the future together, I promise you.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise with a heavy heart as the most horrific violence continues in the Middle East. We need an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages, investigation of war crimes by the ICC and ICJ, an arms embargo, and the provision of humanitarian aid for the people of Gaza. I'm also alarmed by the rise in anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and anti-Palestinian racism. Not only are people worried about the safety of family members in Palestine and Israel, they worry about their own safety as hate incidents multiply. Let us be clear. Canadian Jews are not responsible for the actions of Netanyahu's government, and Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim Canadians are not responsible for the actions of Hamas. Targeting people because of their faith or ethnic background is not activism, it is racism. People are hurting and afraid. We must come together and recognize each other's common humanity. We must speak out loudly together against rising hate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, once again on Thursday, the Liberals refused to recognize the decline of the French language in Quebec and in Canada. And yet, the numbers are right there in the last census. From 2016 to 2021, the proportion of Francophones in Canada for whom French is the first spoken language at home dropped from 22.2% to 21.4%. The proportion of Quebecers who primarily speak French at home dropped from 79% to 77.5%. And in the workplace, we've gone from 81.9% in 2011 to 79.7%. Those are the facts. The denial of those facts by the government, and notably by its Minister of Immigration, is a political choice. It's clear that the only way to reverse the decline of French is for Quebec to become master of its political and linguistic future. It's clear that the best way to do that is for Quebec to become a country. The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, this NDP Liberal government will stop at nothing to cover up their corruption. Yesterday, in a brazen effort to shield the Prime Minister, Liberal and NDP MPs voted to shut down committee to block the RCMP Commissioner from answering questions about the Prime Minister's obstruction of an RCMP criminal investigation into his conduct during the SNC-Lavalin scandal. This is the same Prime Minister who obstructed justice to protect SNC-Lavalin, and when his Attorney General stood up to him, he fired her. The same Prime Minister who's been found guilty of multiple ethical violations, and now we learn the same Prime Minister who thwarted a criminal investigation into his own wrongdoing. The record of this Prime Minister is one of corruption and cover-up after 8 years, he's not worth the cost.
Hear, hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, every day in Canada, 30 individuals are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson Canada has identified key priorities for the Parkinson community to consider to better improve overall health and quality of life for those living with this degenerative brain disease. By identifying gaps and improving training and knowledge transfer with qualified healthcare professionals, we can allow for earlier diagnosis and treatment. Examining the systemic issues and barriers in our healthcare system will determine the steps we can take to increase the number of healthcare practitioners available to support the people that are living with this disease. And by advancing equitable access to care and improved treatments, it will ensure better quality of life for all Canadians living with Parkinson's. Today, I'm joining our member from Milton and Senator Stephen Green to host Parkinson Canada on the Hill to hear from the voices of those working to help those diagnosed with Parkinson's and improved outcomes in Wellington, room 310 from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales. L'honorable.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Prime Minister doubled the cost of housing and the national debt increased inflation more rapidly than over the past 40 years. Interest rates have increased at record rates. This doesn't only harm Canadians' wallets, but also harms Canadian unity. We've just seen the first budget for an independent Quebec. They justify their budget by saying that the Prime Minister is plunging this country in debt. Does the Prime Minister realise that he's not worth the cost, the financial cost and the divisive cost? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to answer to my colleague very shortly, but I would like to express my deepest condolences following the death of 5 Canadians, including 3 children in Sault Ste. Marie this morning.
Tragedy that occurred after intimate partner violence escalated into a shooting rampage at 2 homes. I want to extend my deepest condolences to the grieving families, friends, and loved ones of the victims. Know that you are not alone.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, we also offer our deepest condolences to all those who have been affected by this tragedy. The Parti Québécois mentioned that they want to reach independence for economic reasons. That is something the party would not have dared during Conservative years because taxes were low, debt was low, taxes were low, inflation was low, and growth was strong. And that is the reason for which this Prime Minister should bring back old politics. This has led to divisiveness in Quebec. Will he recognise that his policies are not worth the cost financially or with regards to the division of this country? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the official parties are bringing us back to the old days of provincial squabbles, but we will concretely help Canadians with investments in housing, with help for childcare. We will invest in our seniors. We will invest in our workers. We continue to be here to help people so that they can go grocery shop. With better competitivity, we'll continue to anchor ourselves in delivering benefits and opportunities for Canadians while other parties are talking about mere squabbles. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Because of the excellent low inflation, low tax, low debt record of the Conservatives, the Separatists were a dead cause not so long ago, but his inflationary policies have brought them back. Prime Minister said it was just inflation when food prices went up, but then there was shrinkflation, smaller sized servings for higher prices, and now we have skimpflation, where food processors, in order to pay the carbon tax, actually strip out the nutritional value of the food. How much health and nutrition will Canadians have to lose before this Prime Minister reverses his plan to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite likes to play word games. I suggest he's conflating all the issues together to try and scare Canadians. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, while he's reaching for new boogeymen to try and make Canadians fearful and angry, we are delivering supports for Canadians with historic announcements on housing across the country, and municipalities are stepping up to respond to the needs of Canadians on moving forward and with greater competition to bring down or to stabilize grocery prices, to continue to be there for seniors, for young people. We know cuts the Conservative leader are proposing are not the answer. We're going to continue to be there for people.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
They're living with Liberal cuts every day. They have to cut how many meals they eat. They have to cut the portions that they eat. And now they're cutting the nutrition out of that food because after 8 years, his carbon tax and his inflationary policies are clearly not worth the cost or the corruption. Yesterday, the Prime Minister's toadies in the NDP and Liberal committee blocked the RCMP commissioner from testifying about the Prime Minister blocking a criminal investigation into his S&C scandal. Now, the ArriveCan app is under criminal investigation after wasting $50 million. Will the Prime Minister agree to personally cooperate with this criminal investigation into his Arrive Scam app?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, when the opposition is bringing up matters that were settled 4 years ago, we see at which point they are trying anything they can to try and distract from the fact that they have no plan, they have no approach. They are proposing just cuts, and more cuts for Canadians, while we step up with things like dental care for kids, support child care spaces across the country, invest in supports for families and better homes as we accelerate the rental home initiative. These are things that the Conservative Party campaigned against. They continue to propose cuts and fights while we deliver for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Amplified disinformation on the subject last week. He went into hiding and refused to answer questions and then sent out his public safety minister to offer a midnight answer. So the Prime Minister needs to speak about it himself. Does he believe that the State of Israel fired a rocket or missile at the Al-Ali hospital in Gaza? Yes or no?
Le très honorable chef de l'opposition. Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. President, when it comes to issues that have such a serious impact on Canadians and on people around the world, we need to make sure we're grounded in facts. That's why I asked our defense experts and our military specialists to analyze open source and classified data to come to a conclusion. And the conclusion is that according to the best evidence that they have, Israel did not fire a rocket at that hospital.
The Honourable Member for Bailleul-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, my friend Paul in Quebec will be happy to hear that their budget has brought back Quebec independence as a debate here in the federal parliament through the voice of the leader of the official opposition. The Prime Minister has gone against America and America's intelligence opinions when it comes to the hospital in Gaza. He has not spoken about the information we have as a country. How will he persuade the United States to join our call for a consensus for a truce in Gaza and Palestine? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Quite the contrary, Mr. Speaker. I spoke to President Biden last weekend, and we continue to do everything necessary as allies to ensure that humanitarian assistance can cross into Gaza through humanitarian corridors. We will continue to strive for this, for humanitarian truces that will allow aid to reach innocent civilians that need help. We need to see hostages released We need to protect the lives of innocents. Canada is fully involved, included with sending humanitarian aid. The Honourable Member for Bailleul-Chambly. Has a President of the United States talked to our Prime Minister about the importance of having a consensus in his own party so that Canada and Quebec can speak with one single voice internationally? Speaking of consensus, he told me last week that he would accept meeting other opposition parties in order to communicate better and in order to establish a parliamentary single voice. I've had no news about this, so should I perhaps free my day tomorrow? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are very busy with our work that people expect us to do, but yes, we will set some time aside so we can talk among party leaders to talk about this extremely difficult situation and also to talk about the ways we can help to unite Canadians. Many people are hurting, many people are angry, many people are feeling various emotions, legitimate emotions and comprehensible emotions, but our role as politicians, as leaders, is to unite Canadians, unite everyone, so that we can reach a consensus, and that's what we will work towards.
L'honorable député de Burnaby-Sud.
Merci. The Bank of Canada interest rates are hurting Canadians. Canadians like John Coughlin, a 76-year-old man who had to sell his home because his mortgage payments went from $1,000 a month to $2,600 a month. And now he's not sure he can find a place that he can afford to rent that's in his budget. Tax incentives to private developers alone will not solve this crisis. So when will the Prime Minister get serious about building homes that people can actually afford?
Hear, hear. Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to be in the member opposite's hometown of Brampton just the other day to actually deliver great news for Bramptonians in line with the great news we've been announcing across the country. 24,000 new homes over the coming years in Brampton because of the housing accelerator that we put on the table. That's $4 billion that councils across the country are talking about and passing motions and debating because of the federal initiative that is putting more homes on lots, that is creating and construction opportunities across the country. We look forward to continue to step up with municipal partners right across the country.
Hear, hear. Bravo.
L'honorable député de Burnaby-Sud.
Unfortunately, we already knew that tents can be set up faster than houses. And we can see it just across the river in Gatineau. But what is the Prime Minister doing this very evening? He's organising a fundraiser at $1,500 a head in that very same city, Gatineau. It would be hard to be more out of touch than this. Is the Prime Minister still planning to go have a chat with rich developers and ask them ever so kindly to build affordable housing? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are very happy to have signed a new agreement on housing with the province of Quebec. The Minister for Housing will have more details to share on this agreement, this unprecedented agreement. We will always work in collaboration with the government of Quebec in order to put forward a plan that works for Quebecers and that will allow that more housing be built more rapidly. That is our priority, of course, Mr. Speaker, and that is the reason for which we are working not only in Quebec, but from coast to coast to coast with our Housing Accelerator Fund. We are delivering for Canadians, and we will continue to deliver for Canadians by working hand in hand with Quebec and other provinces.
Then I have Deputy de Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, when NDP MPs are not busy covering up for the Prime Minister's scandal, they're busy defending anti-Semites. Just yesterday, the NDP member from Hamilton Centre wrote a letter in support of an anti-Semitic MPP that even the Ontario NDP had to expel. Wow. Does the leader of the NDP support his member's letter, and does he support the position of this Ontario MPP? Yeah.
I remind colleagues that a member of an opposition party can't answer the question. The question period. So as a result, unless there's a member of the government that wants to reply, we're going to move on to the next question. The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
8 years of Liberal NDP incompetence, doubling the national debt, resulting in the most rapid mortgage interest rate hikes in Canadian history, putting Canadians most at risk in the G7 for a mortgage default crisis. Around 70,000 mortgages are renewing every month with a minimum of at least a doubling in interest rate. Expensive photo ops don't help either, like a $4 billion housing photo op that built a whopping 0 homes. I mean, the member from Vancouver Granville probably flipped more homes than that. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Will he stop his inflationary deficits and balance the budget so Canadians don't lose their homes?
Ministre du Logement.
Mr. Speaker, it's been fascinating to watch the Conservatives make misguided criticisms about the Housing Accelerator Fund because they fear that it's actually going to create more homes for Canadians. They are rooting against home building in this country for their political interests rather than supporting policies that will put a roof over their neighbours' heads. Mr. Speaker, where the Conservatives promise to cut funding for housing, we will continue to make the investments necessary. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to approach the housing crisis, and Canadians will find relief from the measures that we are putting forward on this side of the House.
Honorable Député de Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Housing Accelerator Fund closed on August 18th. No money left, no bright ideas coming from the Liberal government. But after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, seniors in my riding are losing their homes and joining the ranks of the homeless. Everything is being driven up in cost by their inflationary spending. Bloomberg reports over half of Canadians are saying they're worse off this past year. And with winter coming and the carbon tax piling up, people know that this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. So will they stop their inflationary spending so Canadians can have a roof over their heads?
Mr. Speaker, it's hard to know where to start with the various pieces of misinformation baked into my colleague's question. With respect, she suggested that that seniors need to have more homes, but her housing plan literally includes 0 mention of seniors. Whoa. She suggested that the Housing Accelerator Fund has no money left in it. I would invite her to tune into an announcement that we will be making in Kelowna tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. We are going to continue to make the investments necessary by reducing the cost of building, investing in the ability of communities to build homes. Where we will make investments, the Conservatives will make cuts. They are simply not worth the risk.
Député de Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And announcements do not build homes, and this government has built less homes than in 1972. However, in my riding, I have people that are both working that are not able to have any heat in their house for the last 2 months because of the price that this government continues to drive up with their inflationary spending. The Liberals are so out of touch, they're pouring the money on the inflationary fire and causing misery. Will the Prime Minister rein in his inflationary spending, or is the truth that this government and this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost?
Ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just last week, that member from Sarnia-Lambton repeated some myths about EVs here in this House, where she said that they routinely catch on fire and don't work in the winter. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we actually stay grounded in the facts, what this government is doing and will continue to do. That includes lifting 2.7 million Canadians out of poverty, which is 650,000 children. It means putting a price on pollution and making sure that we're there for Canadians as the climate crisis persists, and we're there and we have their backs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Charlevoix-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, an Angus Reid report tells us that half of Canadians are worse off financially than they were a year ago, and that they expect things to get even worse this year. That is the reality after 8 years of this government. Worse still, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' allies, the Bloc Québécois, are putting on the pressure to radically increase the tax on gas and food. It's getting real expensive to vote Bloc Québécois, Mr. Speaker. Will the Liberals show an iota of compassion and commit not to raise the carbon tax, as requested by the Bloc Québécois? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And once again, there is not a federal carbon pricing in Quebec. That is false, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are preoccupied by the cost of living and by climate change and by the catastrophic impact of natural disasters on our health and on our economy. That is the reason for which we have created a pollution pricing system that meets these concerns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. What we know, Mr. Speaker, is that after 8 years of this Prime Minister, people are scared of finding themselves on the street twice. Not once, but twice. The Bloc Québécois voted against a motion that asked that the carbon taxes be cancelled. The federal carbon tax that has led to huge increases on gas prices for Quebecers. Can the Prime Minister commit, like his member for Avalon did, to cancel the carbon tax, which only increases costs for all Canadians and Quebecers? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And incredibly so, I have to repeat myself, there is no carbon pricing federally in Quebec. Conservatives campaigned on a programme that included a standard on clean fuel, almost identical to that proposed by our government, but now, all of a sudden, they're against it. This attitude is not only hypocritical, it shows us that we cannot trust them when it comes to them respecting their claims for climate action. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, there must be a limit to the federal government's inflexibility. 250,000 businesses could go bankrupt as early as 2024 if the federal government does not postpone repayment of the emergency account loans. 250,000 bankruptcies and countless job losses. There's not another government in the world that would have gone along with that. That is the reason for which all the premiers of Quebec and other provinces demanded on Friday that the repayment of the emergency account be postponed for a year, with no loss of subsidies, of course. Will this government finally offer flexibility to our businesses? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we offer extra flexibility for SMEs so that they can reimburse their loan. This includes a 1-year extension, more flexibility when it comes to refinancing, help to accessing new loans. This is an approach that is balanced and fiscally responsible. The Bloc Québécois voted against this. We are always ready to work with the Bloc Québécois because our main objective is to help small companies all around the country. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, absolutely no one is satisfied with that answer. All the premiers of Quebec and the provinces and territories are demanding a 1-year postponement. All parties in the Quebec National Assembly are demanding a 1-year postponement. The Federation of Independent Businesses is demanding a 1-year postponement. The Bloc Québécois wrote to the Minister for Finance today to demand a 1-year postponement. It's unanimous, Mr. Speaker. Everyone understands that we cannot afford a wave of bankruptcies and job losses in the current economic context. It is glaringly obvious. So when will this government finally understand? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. And as she knows full well, Quebec's economy is 99% SMEs. We know that the global crisis is difficult to live through, and that is exactly why we've implemented extra flexible extensions for this emergency loan. But, Mr. Speaker, we were here, we will be here, and we will be here for SMEs. Last Friday, I was in Bromont to offer financing to a company that will create new jobs, help them for growth, because in Quebec, Economic Development Canada helps many businesses with 1,300 projects over the past year. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, in amongst the 250,000 SMEs threatened with closure are the farms of our country. They are already on the brink with high interest rates, the price of fuel, climate change ravaging crops, and so on. If the federal government adds to their woes with this emergency account affair, it will push them into bankruptcy. The government must defer repayment of the emergency account loans by a year. That is the kind of flexibility our farmers and producers need. Will the government finally do what everyone is asking it to do?
Then I have
the Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to inform my colleague and remind him that during COVID, our government was here to help people and businesses. $9 out of $10 in assistance programs that came from the federal government. Now we've offered some clarifications. We offered a first extension. We've clarified the situation so that our businesses can make the right decision for the future. We are here to support with Economic Development Canada and our other regional development agencies. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of an incompetent government in the management of Canada's real estate, more and more Quebecers who are struggling to make ends meet now have to live in their cars for lack of money and an affordable rent. That is a consequence of a Liberal government that is mismanaging our finances. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois support for the Liberals to radically increase the carbon tax will exacerbate the financial difficulties of Canadians. It's expensive to vote for the Bloc. Why is the government always taxing Canadians more and more and more? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind my colleague that inflation has gone down once again here in Canada. But if he wants to talk about taxes, if he wants to talk about fiscal measures, twice, not once, but twice, our federal government reduced taxes for the middle class. Twice again, Mr. Speaker. Not once, Mr. Speaker, but twice. The Conservatives voted against tax reductions, Mr. Speaker. That is incoherent on their part. Conservatives are not worth the risk, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Well, Mr. Speaker, Quebec is the provinces most affected by inflation in Canada for the 4th month in a row, and the Bloc still supports a radical increase in the Liberal government's second carbon tax. It's expensive to vote for the Bloc Québécois, especially when you end up living in your car. Mr. Speaker, after 8 long years of Liberal mismanagement backed by the NDP and now by the Bloc Québécois, Quebecers want a chance to choose a new Prime Minister. When will we bring back common sense to this country?
Then I have
the Honourable Minister. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that the Conservative Party is a global expert in the art of having double speak, Mr. Speaker. In 2012, the current leader of the Conservatives tried to eviscerate the Act on Waterways by claiming that this wouldn't harm the environment. We know exactly what's happening with greenhouse gas and its effect on the environment. So, Mr. Speaker, we have no lessons to learn from a party that is the expert in double speak, Mr. Speaker.
Then I have Député de Haldimand-Norfolk.
After 8 years of this Liberal government, Canadians have lost hope of owning a home and having enough money to raise their families and pay their bills. Hope has given way to worry and despair. A new Angus Reid survey reveals that almost 80% of Canadians are worried about rising mortgage interest rates. Wow. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Right. When will this NDP Liberal government end their inflationary spending so that Canadians can fix the housing market?
Yeah, when? The Honourable Minister for Housing.
Mr. Speaker, it seems the Conservatives understand the cost of everything but the value of nothing. We continue to make the investments necessary to build homes for Canadians, which they decry as inflationary spending. They oppose spending on affordable housing. They oppose investments that are going to change the way that cities build homes. When we cut taxes to make it cheaper to build homes for Canadians, they propose to put them back on. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have 2 very clear choices: to make the investments necessary to address the housing crisis, or to cut. I know where I stand, Mr. Speaker. They are not worth the risk. We will make the investments necessary.
The honourable member from Mission Matsqui, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, small businesses are struggling to survive. Increased payroll taxes, a punishing carbon tax, red tape, and labour shortages are crushing them. It's no wonder that Restaurants Canada reports 1/3 of restaurants are operating at a loss. Wow. Will this government stop their attack on restaurants, rein in inflationary spending, and end the punishing tax hikes so restaurants can keep their doors open?
L'honorable ministre.
Mr. Speaker, speaking about entrepreneurs, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for joining me in attending events for programs our government has funded, which Conservative colleagues have voted against. He was able to see the real-life, tangible examples of success stories. Our government believes in empowering young entrepreneurs and has committed nearly $60 million to Futurepreneur, who provides loans, mentorship, and education to Canadian entrepreneurs aged 18 to 39. Now that my honourable colleague has witnessed the benefits of our investment, perhaps he and the Conservatives can stop voting against supports for young entrepreneurs, which will take Canada backwards.
L'honorable député. À l'ordre.
Order.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
Député de Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Winnipeg Salvation Army announced 60 urgent shelter beds to meet the needs of refugee claimants. Winnipeg Centre is where most refugees and refugee claimants first settle in Manitoba, and there is a severe shortage of rent-geared-to-income homes to house refugees and their families. While the Liberals failed to act, newcomers in my community are sleeping in shelters or on the streets. Will the Liberals make major investments in deeply affordable housing so that everyone has a roof over their head?
L'honorable ministre du Logement.
The Honourable Minister for Housing.
We have debates in this chamber around housing policy. It's really important, and I thank the honourable member for her focus on continuing to support some of society's most vulnerable. We work with different populations who are struggling, including vulnerable newcomers, including women fleeing domestic violence, including other people who simply cannot find a place to stay. We have doubled the funding for homelessness support through the Reaching Home program, and we will continue to make the investments necessary to protect some of the country's most vulnerable people as we approach the winter months. It's important we take care of our most vulnerable, and I appreciate the NDP's support in this regard.
L'honorable député de Nunavut.
In Nunavut, one bottle of orange juice is $24. One can of chicken soup is $10. Nutrition North is subsidizing corporate greed. It is not lowering grocery prices. Last weekend, the NDP leader and I heard from Nunavut. They said they can barely make ends meet. Meanwhile, the Northwest Company continues to report sky-high profits. When will the Liberals introduce an excess profit tax and reform Nutrition North so it can help people, not CEOs?
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the member for that very important question. Nutrition North is an important program. That's why we announced $163 million of new money for Nutrition North in the last year. Of that, significant amount of money will go to the Harvester Support Grant, which encourages people in the North and Indigenous nations to do traditional harvesting, hunting, and food sharing. This year alone, the grant supported 15,000 harvesters, 410 hunts and harvests, and over 717 food sharing initiatives.
Well done. The Honourable Deputy House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is already well on its way to becoming a global leader in the production of electric vehicles and EV battery manufacturing. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party has its eyes closed to this. Just last week, the Conservative member from Sarnia-Lambton repeated the absurd myth in this House that EVs routinely catch on fire and don't work in the winter. Meanwhile, in Eastern Ontario, we recently saw one of North America's largest investments in EV battery manufacturing. Could the minister please tell us why the government sees these investments to be so important for Canada?
L'honorable ministre.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for a great question, Mr. Speaker, and his leadership. Mr. Speaker is actually right. I am very pleased to report to this House that Umicore from Belgium, Mr. Speaker, chose Canada to have their plant in North America, Mr. Speaker. Their plant is going to create 600 jobs in Loyalist Township just near to Kingston, but also, Mr. Speaker, it's going to produce enough battery materials for 800,000 electric vehicles here, Mr. Speaker. There will be a piece of Kingston and Loyalist in every car in North America, Mr. Speaker. We are building the car of the future, something that the do-nothing opposition would never be able to do.
L'honorable député de Leeds-Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
After 8 years of this Prime Minister, when there's now cover-ups about his cover-ups, it's clear that he's not worth the cost. Yesterday, the NDP Liberal government sent their members to shut down a testimony from the RCMP Commissioner about the investigation into the Prime Minister's SNC Lavalin scandal. This is the same investigation that he blocked the release of documents to when they were investigating whether or not he obstructed justice. My question is to the Chair of the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. On what date will the Commissioner of the RCMP appear at the committee?
L'honorable président du comité, le député de Barrie-Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, I can't begin to tell you my profound disappointment in the fact that the NDP Liberal coalition chose to shut down and adjourn the meeting before it happened. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that proper notice was given. In fact, I emailed the vice chairs of the committee as well as other committee members 72 hours before the meeting occurred. Now, I took advantage in my position as chair to invite the RCMP, given the latest information that had been released. Public Safety Minister suggested that if we had any questions to the RCMP, that we pose it to them. I took that opportunity. I can't tell the member when the next opportunity will be, but I hope it's soon, Mr. Speaker.
À l'ordre.
Order.
L'honorable député de Leeds-Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, I hope they were paying attention, Mr. Speaker. That's the first time we've had a question actually answered in this House in 8 years. The Prime Minister and the Public Safety Minister both said that the RCMP Commissioner was the one to answer questions, and he was sitting at the table yesterday, and they adjourned the meeting as part of their ongoing cover-up. They blocked it just like the Prime Minister blocking the release of those documents into the criminal investigation that was concerning him. After 8 years of this Prime Minister and his detrimental effect on our democratic institutions, it's clear he's not worth the cost. To the leader of the NDP, is protecting the Prime Minister from criminal investigations part of their coalition deal?
As I had mentioned before in a previous question, opposition leaders are not invited to do that, only members of the government, parliamentary secretaries, or chairs of committees. If there is a minister who would like to answer this question, I recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member well knows, committees are in charge of their own business and they make those decisions themselves. But if he wants to talk about democratic institutions and criminal investigations, I will remind him that it was a member of the governing Conservatives that was arrested for violating election laws and actually went to jail. So he should be careful as he's casting stones in glass houses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, I would appreciate if you give your attention to the next speaker who is being recognized by the Speaker, the member from Calgary-Mindapore.
Damning new information revealed today shows that Arrive Can contractors submitted receipts to the government for a company that doesn't even exist. Wow. This investigation already includes allegations of identity theft, forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, and collusion in the creation of the $54 million Arrive Can app. How much worse can this boondoggle get? Simple question, which Liberal insiders got rich?
Who got rich?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as colleagues know very well, we expect public servants at all times to follow the appropriate Treasury Board contracting practices. My colleague will know in this case the Border Services Agency, as part of their internal audit, uncovered information that they then subsequently referred to the appropriate police authorities. And Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what has to happen in these cases, and we should let the RCMP do whatever work they think is appropriate in this concerning circumstance.
Absolutely. L'honorable député de Mégantic-l'Érable.
The NDP and the Liberals want to protect their Prime Minister at any cost. Yesterday, they prevented testimony from the RCMP Commissioner, preventing testimony on the SNC-Lavalin affair. I was deeply disappointed to see the Bloc Québécois vote in favor of protecting the RCMP. The RCMP was investigating obstruction of justice and problems with SNC-Lavalin. Corruption is expensive, and when the Bloc decides to help cover up the truth, it's expensive. Why is the Prime Minister so afraid of the RCMP to the point that it needed the Bloc to hide its involvement with SNC-Lavalin? The Honourable Government House Leader. As my honourable colleague knows full well, committees make their own decisions. That has always been the case, and I hope my colleague will acknowledge that that is how it works.
L'honorable député de Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte.
Quebecers are proud of their aerospace industry, and Bombardier in particular. Over the years, Bombardier has developed extraordinary expertise, making Joseph Armand's company a key international player in aircraft construction. But when the time came for Ottawa to renew its Aurora Maritime Patrol aircraft without a call for tender, they turned to the Americans, rejecting Quebec's expertise out of hand. Why didn't Ottawa issue a call for tender to renew its Aurora fleet?
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci à mon collègue de me...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for allowing me to talk about the importance of aeronautics. In Quebec, we are very proud. We've invested significantly not only in businesses, but in employees of the middle class to make sure that they can continue to pay the bills for their families, but also contribute to technological and economic development in Quebec and elsewhere throughout the country.
L'honorable député de Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte.
Président, soyons sérieux. Des acteurs...
Let's get serious. Major players in aeronautics are on the Hill today. Specifically, the director of the International Civil Aviation Observatory, machinists, Unifor, and the former commander of the Royal Canadian Air Force. They have all the answers to any questions the government might have. They have all the information to show that when it comes to aeronautics, they have the know-how and they are competitive. They have confidence in themselves and they are right. All they're asking for is a fair process. Will Ottawa finally reconsider its position and issue a call for tender?
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci à nouveau.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to our colleagues who give us the opportunity to talk about how important it is to invest not only in aeronautics in Quebec, but throughout the whole country. We know that Bombardier is an exceptional and important partner in the aeronautics sector throughout the country. including General Dynamics here in Ottawa. They make a significant difference in technological capacity, and they support the technological needs of our
Grant.
Mr. Speaker, silence and shutdown. This is what this NDP Liberal cover-up coalition did yesterday when the RCMP commissioner was shamefully denied any opportunity to give evidence in relation to the Prime Minister's criminal investigation. Nowhere in the coalition agreement does it say that the NDP needs to be complicit in this Prime Minister's political scandals. After 8 years of this government, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Simple question. What is this coalition covering up?
Mr. Speaker, the RCMP have been very clear in this matter. There is no criminal investigation. They have closed the case. That is the independent decision taken by Canada's National Police Force, and the Commissioner, in his public comments yesterday, said he was very comfortable with that decision.
L'honorable député de Foothills.
After 8 years, farm families know that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. A financial health report confirmed that higher Liberal inflation, taxes and interest rates are taking a serious toll on Canadian producers. Their net farm incomes are down 8%, but expenses are up 21%, the highest jump in 50 years. Well, since the last tax and spend Trudeau government. All parties in this House support a Conservative bill to remove the carbon tax from on-farm fuels. But the Liberals are trying to kill that bill in the Senate. Will the Prime Minister respect the will of this House and axe his farm-killing carbon tax?
L'honorable ministre.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate my honourable colleague's concern. But the fact is, if we do not deal with the environment, we cannot do anything about the prices, any prices in agriculture. Quite simply, we got an opposition party that does not feel that climate change is an issue. We on this side and this government feel climate change is an issue, and we will continue to fight climate change because the disasters that happen right across the country add to the cost of food from one end of the country to the other. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Foothills.
The number one concern for Canadian farm families are Liberal regulations and carbon taxes. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business surveyed their members, and they asked for their top 3 priorities. Number 1, reduce the regulatory and red tape burden. Number 2, reduce the overall tax burden. Number 3, 66% said their number 1 priority is to pass a Conservative bill to remove the carbon tax from on-farm fuels. After 8 years of this Prime Minister disrespecting this House and ignoring farmers, he's not worth the cost. Why is the Prime Minister working so hard to bankrupt farmers and disrespect this House? Why will he not axe his carbon tax?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And indeed, I live in a rural riding as well. I meet with farmers, and some farmers even as recently as this morning. But, Mr. Speaker, the hypocrisy from the Conservative side is just getting a little bit difficult to stomach. It's ironic and, in fact, disappointing to see members like the member from Bellechasse/Eschamin-Lévis and the member from Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, who used to be Liberal provincial ministers and parliamentary secretaries in charge of carbon pricing, Mr. Speaker. They all ran on a carbon price. They all said they were going to fight climate change, but none of them are willing to stand up and say climate change in this House. And it's probably because the Conservative leader has decided climate change doesn't exist. He's too risky, he's reckless, and he's not worth the cost.
L'honorable député de Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The drive to net zero is creating economic prosperity for Canadians right now. In every region of the country, from critical mineral mines to renewable energy projects to hydrogen production facilities. If we provide the right supports and bring workers to the table now, these opportunities will only increase. Yesterday, to the dismay of workers across the country, The Conservative Party voted against the Canadian Sustainable Jobs Act. Can the minister tell us more about why this bill is important?
L'honorable ministre.
Speaker, I want to thank my friend and Alberta colleague, the MP for Calgary Skyview, for his strong advocacy. Workers are at the heart of Canada's prosperity, and the Canadian Sustainable Jobs Act will ensure that together we can grow the economy and create good, middle-class, sustainable jobs in Alberta and across the country. While we engage workers through this legislation, the Conservatives are doing everything they can to stop workers from being at the table. Their votes against this important bill for workers, Mr. Speaker, is simply more proof that the Conservative leader and his party are simply not worth the risk. That's right.
L'honorable député de Lambton-Kent Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, the Liberals continue to choose ideology over economic reality. The carbon tax continues to punish Canadians who need to eat. Food banks across the country are seeing record visits, including from the middle class and those with full-time jobs. A quarter of our population is going hungry or can't afford basic necessities. The Liberal NDPs just don't understand basic math. If it costs more to grow food, it will cost more to buy food. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. So when will this government stop punishing farmers and axe the carbon tax?
L'honorable ministre.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to press pause on the rhetoric here and focus on what's important, and that's Canadian families. On this side of the House, we worry about Canadian families, and we are here for Canadian families, helping them balance their budgets, particularly in tough economic times. How do we do this? We've reached 3.5 million Canadian families and over 6 million children with the Canada Child Benefit, let alone building a national daycare program, Mr. Speaker. We're here for Canadian families.
L'honorable député de South Shore St. Margaret's.
After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Nova Scotians are having to choose between heating and eating. A senior on a fixed income in my community told me last year at the beginning of winter it cost $850 to fill his home heating tank. This year, with the new Nova Scotia carbon tax put on by this government, it cost him an astounding $1,800. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. It's time to keep the heat on and take the taxes off. So when will this government, these Liberals, axe the carbon tax so Nova Scotians can afford to heat their homes?
L'honorable ministre.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague knows very well that the program he's referring to puts a price on pollution and puts more money in the pockets of Canadian families. He's now proposing to take it away so he can make pollution free again. But on the issue of affordability for seniors, Mr. Speaker, I agree that seniors need help. That's why we raised the old age security for people over 75. That's why we restored the age of eligibility from 67 to 65. That's why we increased the guaranteed income supplement for low-income single seniors by $947. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that those measures have in common is that Conservatives opposed every one of them.
L'honorable député de Coast Bay Central, Notre-Dame.
Mr. Speaker, for seniors like Oswald Hodder of Stoneville, after 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Oswald recently filled his oil tank for the first time since this Liberal NDP coalition imposed carbon tax on Atlantic Canadian heating fuel. He was shocked to see $119 in carbon tax on enough fuel to heat his home for just 1 month. Will this Prime Minister leave Atlantic Canadians, let them be warm, and stop persecuting and bring them out of the cold?
Yeah.
Colleagues, that could happen to any one of us. L'honorable ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity to once again refer to the consumers distributing catalog of greenie products that the other side of the House would have brought up if they had been allowed the opportunity and their support for a carbon tax in their last platform, Mr. Speaker. Who knows what they would have put in this catalog, what conservative staples, unicycles, porterhouse steaks, Chateaubriand, gift certificates for the Savoy Hotel. We don't know, Mr. Speaker. But we do know that now, today, we make sure they get cold, hard cash in their pockets. 8 out of 10 Canadian families do better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député d'Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the relationship between Canada and Ukraine is a sacred one. Canada was the first Western nation to recognize Ukraine's independence in 1991. Since Russia's further invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Canada has been a global leader in supporting Ukraine. And today, we're continuing to build that relationship here in this House as we debate the modernized Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. Could the Minister of Export Promotion, International Trade and Economic Development share with Canadians the importance of this agreement to Canada and to Ukraine?
L'honorable ministre.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member from Etobicoke Centre for his steadfast and unwavering support for a free and democratic Ukraine. The modernized Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement will mark a new era in the Canada-Ukraine economic relationship. It's fundamental for Canadian businesses and exporters to participate in Ukraine's economic reconstruction when they win the war and recover from Russia's illegal and unjustified invasion. Canada has stood with Ukraine from its first days as a nation, and we will continue to be there with whatever it takes for as long as it takes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Monsieur le Président, 360 travailleurs.
Mr. Speaker, 360 workers of the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation are on strike. With the rising cost of living, they're demanding fair wages. In the past, Liberals, like the Conservatives, have trampled on workers' rights. I'm sorry to interrupt the member, but we are adjusting the sound here in the House of Commons. I will ask the member to restart once I have assurance that the technical issues are resolved. We're going to retry. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie from the top, please.
Merci. Monsieur le Président, 360 travailleurs.
Mr. Speaker, 360 workers of the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation are on strike. With the rising cost of living, they're demanding fair wages. In the past, Liberals, like Conservatives, trampled on workers' rights by imposing special legislation. The NDP is clear. These workers have the right to fight for better working conditions. Can the Prime Minister assure us today, now, that he will not trample their rights by imposing special legislation?
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Président, let me assure this House that this side of the House believes strongly in collective bargaining. We believe that the best deals are reached at the collective bargaining table. We are working with both sides right now to bring an end to this as quickly as possible. We believe that the hard work must be done by the employer and by the union, and those deals that are made at the table are the most resilient and longest lasting. Thank you very much.
L'honorable député de Cowichan-Malahat-Langford.
Mr. Speaker, over 165,000 Canadians suffer from traumatic brain injuries every year. Brain injury patients are often shoved into expensive private care or left to fend for themselves. decades of Liberal and Conservative governments have failed to support the more than 1.5 million Canadians currently suffering the consequences. Canadians deserve to be supported when they go through a health crisis. So, will the minister back my plan to create a comprehensive national strategy on brain injuries to promote awareness, prevention, and treatment?
Hear, hear.
L'honorable ministre de la Santé.
The Honourable Minister for Health.
Mr. Speaker, and anytime somebody sustains a brain injury, it has a devastating impact upon their life and the life of their families. And the member is absolutely right. We have to do everything we can. That's why we're making critical investments across the health system. $200 billion, Mr. Speaker, of additional money being put in. And those dollars are to ensure, yes, that we can see better health outcomes, but also that we can have better prevention, better care. We saw a fantastic announcement in British Columbia. There's more to come in the rest of the country. Health transformation is happening, Mr. Speaker.
Time provided for oral questions has finished. A point of order. I would like to ask everyone to leave this chamber as quietly as possible so that the member for Sarnia-Lambton can rise.
During the question period, the government House Leader and the member of Kingston and the Islands stated that I had provided misinformation about fires in batteries. I'd like to inform this House that the Bureau of Transportation Statistics says 3.5% of hybrid and electric vehicles.
I hate to interrupt the member from Sarnia-Lambton, but in the chair's eyes, it seems that was moving towards debate. If I could just ask members once again to leave quietly from the room. Orders of the day.
Resuming debate, second reading, Bill C-57. Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Etobicoke Centre. 3 minutes and 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I was saying before question period, Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom, but they're also fighting for all of us, and we need to be fighting for them. And Canada has been fighting for them. Under this government, we've been a global leader in supporting Ukraine. Canada's committed over $9 billion in assistance in financial, military, humanitarian, development, and other assistance. And this includes $5 billion in financial aid, which is the largest amount of financial aid per capita of any country in the world, almost $2 billion in military support, and humanitarian support of about $350 million, and so much more. Speaker, these steps